Well, hello everybody, and thanks for joining us online here at Eaglebrook Church in the North Woods of Wisconsin. If you don't know who I am, my name is Steve Rowe, and I'm the pastor here. Today we're also going to have Arnie Bodecker, our assistant pastor, join us for this kind of a joint venture we're going to try here this morning. So as you can tell already, things today are going to be a bit different. First of all, there will not be any new teaching this morning. Secondly, this is going to be completely casual. It's going to be a bit raw, okay, and that's going to be fine as we go through this. But here's what we're going to do today, so let me set this up for you and then the rationale behind it. Leading into this past week, I just felt like God was asking me and then asking our church to pause. I mean, too many times we are in such a hurry to get to the next thing that we miss the magnitude or the beauty or the joy of what is right before us. Or we fail to properly deal with the stuff that God is showing us in our lives. And we may give a mental nod like we're listening or paying attention, but then we never really change as a result. And as a result of all this, we often live life in a very shallow pool. We never fully enjoy where we are or where we're going or what we're doing. We're never fully present. We then never really learn or grow. We never allow ourselves then to heal before we try to run full tilt again. We just keep adding stuff into our lives, moving on to the next thing, and before we digest everything that's been given to us, including what we experience on Sunday mornings. So today, we are pausing. And as I mentioned last Sunday in our Facebook Live, there is a word in the Old Testament called Selah. And it's used about 74 times in various places, but mostly in the Psalms. And we don't know exactly what these words or what the words mean, but the word is placed, where it is placed, Selah indicates a pause. And if it were a musical score, it would be the place where the music keeps going as an interlude and the words stop, giving the listener the chance then to reflect. It is usually placed after a very deep or profound foundational truth. So practicing the pause. It has been largely forgotten in our world, and I think it's time that we get it back. And today we are going to do just that. I know we sent out some note sheets ahead of this, I believe, yesterday. And so if you have those available, this is going to help you as you process through this morning, this afternoon or evening, whenever you're watching this. Also, when we get to the end of our time here today, those will be very important as well. So this might be a good opportunity if you haven't printed those yet to do so, or if you may also have them online, you can follow along as well. But the point of today is this. We are going to slow down. We are going to pause. And we're going to reflect on what we've shared collectively, Arnie and I, the last couple of weeks. And then we're going to allow you the opportunity to respond to various questions, to digest them, to grow and be changed before moving on to the next thing. So Arnie's going to lead you in some questions first, and then I will come up and do the same. And at the end, we're going to provide an opportunity then to practice the pause, Selah, to reflect on all these questions and allow God to minister to you. All right? So at this time, Arnie, the next segment is yours.
All right. Well, thanks, Steve, for sending things my way here. And last week, I shared this message that took us on a journey through the book of Ruth. And the question that we were wrestling with at that time was the question of what do we do when God seems to be absent? or distant? What do we do in those times of life where God seems to go completely missing on us? Because as you trace out the story of Naomi throughout the book of Ruth, I mean, you see someone who feels utterly abandoned by God. Right? I mean, this poor woman, I mean, she first travels to a foreign land because of a famine, and she travels there with her husband and her 2 sons, and then pretty much right away we find out that her husband dies, and then her 2 sons also die, and there she is left all by herself in the middle of nowhere. I mean, she's lost everything. She's lost everyone, and she feels like either God is just gone, He's just missing, or even worse, she feels like God's hand is against her. She feels afflicted by God. But as we trace out the details of this story, this is where we see all of the ways that while it seemed like God had gone completely missing, while it seemed like God was absent, we see that God was actually at work the entire time behind the scenes, working all the details out, having the right thing happen at just the right time, in just the right way, in order to provide for Naomi and Ruth. And so I don't want to revisit the details of this too much, since we just shared this last week. I mean, you can still go back and watch this video on our website or on YouTube if you haven't seen it already. But the pause here, the points to take a moment to reflect on here would be this. I mean, first off, what this story shows us is that we live in a broken world. And so there will be times when God seems to be absent, when God seems to go missing on us, But what this story also wants us to see is that even when God seems to be absent, that this is a God who is always at work, who is always doing things behind the scenes. We just don't always see it at the time. And so on the one hand, we don't have to sugarcoat those times in life when God seems to be missing. Right? Well, we don't need to pretend and be all spiritual or put on a happy face. No, when God seems to be missing, we can name it for what it is. We can cry out to God and say, "How long, O Lord? Will you hide from me forever? Why do you hide your face from me in times of trouble?" Right? Because the scriptures never ask us to fake it. The scriptures are always inviting us to be completely real with God. And so one way that we can use this time of pause and reflection might be just to be real with God. Crying out to God and saying, "God, where are you right now? Because I'm not feeling it. I'm not seeing you." Where there's no more pretending, you can just say it as it is and be real with God. That's so important. Okay, but then, like I said, what this story of Ruth also shows us is that even when God seems to be absent, what we see in this story is that God is actually at work the entire time, orchestrating things in just the right way, right? Where we see that it just so happens that Ruth and Naomi head back to Israel at just the right time, or it just so happens that Ruth chooses this field to work in, where she meets Boaz, right? We see that this is a God who's always putting the pieces together, who's always at work, who's always present. We're just not always aware of it. And so another thing that we can take a moment to pause on here and to take a moment to reflect on is to take a look around in your own life and to try to have eyes to see all the ways that God is at work in your life. To see what God is doing, the pieces that He's putting together, because we can develop having this kind of perspective. We can develop having this kind of vision of our life. I remember just over a year ago now, Kelly was driving our Ford Escape, and all of a sudden out of nowhere, she was sideswiped. And by the grace of God, Kelly was perfectly okay, but the car was totaled. Okay, and so we needed to find a replacement car for Kelly to drive. And so after a little bit of research, we decided that we wanted to get a Jeep Cherokee. Okay, it looked like a good model for us. It seemed to be the right price point, so we started looking. But what was so funny is once we decided on that particular model of car, it's like we saw it everywhere. You know, we'd be driving through town. It's like, oh, well, there's a Jeep Cherokee, and oh, there's another one there. We'd go through a parking lot, and it's like, there's one, and there's one, and there's one. It's like once it was on our radar, we were seeing it everywhere, okay? And it can be the same way with regard to having eyes to see how God is at work in your life. Okay, if you start looking around for all of those it just so happened kind of moments, you'll start seeing them everywhere. You know, where I just wanted to swing into Walmart real quick and pick up something, but I just so happened to run into this person, which led to this conversation, right? Or where, I felt led to open up this book of the Bible. I felt led to read this passage, and then it just so happened that's what got preached on that week. It's like, you think God is maybe trying to show you something? Right? You start to see it all over the place, And so another thing for us to reflect on as we take a moment to pause here is to look at the details of your life. Look at the day-to-day events in your world and your routine and ask, do I see God there? What is God doing? Right? Well, what do I see him putting together? What do I see him working out? How is God at work? What is he showing me? What is he teaching me? What is he shaping within me? Okay? And then one other thing that we can do is to remember all the ways that God has revealed himself to us in this way in the past. Because I'm sure we all have those moments in life, just like Naomi and Ruth in this story, those times where we felt like God was missing, when it seemed like God was totally absent, but then later on, in hindsight, we could look back and say, oh, God was actually very active the whole time. And so another thing to do during a moment of pause, during a moment of reflection, would be to take a moment to remember these times in life when God seemed to be missing initially, but then you could truly see that he was active the entire time. And then, beyond that, I would ask you to share those stories, right? I mean, maybe you can actually take a few minutes and type up your story and send it to me via email or something like that. I would love to hear your stories. Or at the very least, you could talk about it as a family. Parents, tell your kids about that time when you thought that God was missing, that you thought that God was gone, but then he came through in this way, right? Or husbands, remind your wives of that one time. Remember when God just seemed to let us down, but then this happened? Right? Or wives, share that with your husbands. Again, take a moment to remember these stories, but then be sure to tell these stories. Share these stories with someone, because this will help put the reality of how God is always at work in our lives. It'll help put that reality on your radar. And just like that Jeep Cherokee did for me, you'll start to see it everywhere. All right, and so at the end of this video, we will be revisiting these themes and some of these questions as we provide a place to pause and reflect. But for now, I'll hand things back to Pastor Steve.
Well, thanks, Arnie. Man, that was awesome. And again, we're just so blessed to have Arnie on staff here, and it's just great to have him teach like he did the last week and then in the times past earlier this year, and it just brings such a blessing to so many people, and so we're just so grateful for that. And so thanks for those questions, and again, look forward to reviewing and reflecting and pausing and going through those here at the end as we get to that part of the teaching here today. The first set of questions that I'm going to focus on have to do with the teachings that I did earlier this month and then back into July. And they were based out of Hebrews chapter 12 and then Romans chapter 12. Those are the two primary passages. And again, those teachings are also available online through our website and through Facebook and other areas as well, if you wanted to get the whole story of those teachings. But the first one that I want to focus on is that one that we said, life is a marathon, not a sprint. With a reminder that we all need to pace ourselves. Otherwise, it is a recipe for burnout or fatigue or unhealthy expectations or even worse. Think of it in terms of a car race. Or think about this. A drag race lasts about what, 10 to 15 seconds on a straight track? And then it's over. But the Daytona 500 is 500 laps. And it takes several hours. And drivers have to pace themselves. They have to stop for fuel. They have to stop to change tires. Why? Because they cannot finish the race with what they started with. They need a crew to help them. They need fresh wheels to make it to the next leg of the race. They need fuel to make it to the end. Folks, I can tell you this, you and I will not make it if we do not pace ourselves, if you do not pace yourself and get refueled and get what you need from God and from other believers to help you make it to the next leg of the race. So my first question that I want you to pause and think about is this. What areas of your life have you been living as a sprint rather than a marathon? Or as a drag race rather than the Daytona 500? Meaning, at some point, you thought that you should be through this all by now. That it should have ended by now. And now you're tired and now you're frustrated. I mean, part of what we're all dealing with collectively here is this continuation of this COVID-19 world, right? I mean, we can handle a few weeks of this, maybe a few months, but it keeps going and it keeps going and things get more complicated. There are more inconveniences that we have to put up with and tolerate. And so that's just one example. And I know all of you may have very different examples that you are going through in your own life right now. Maybe you've just gotten blasted by life lately. And it's time, you already know, it's time for a pit stop where you need to regroup and repair and heal and refuel before you get back onto the track and back into the race. So folks, whatever the issue is in your life that you're facing, you need to have a paradigm shift in your thinking if you are going to make it. That life is a marathon, it is not a sprint, and that applies to so many areas. So right now, some of the other questions I want you to think about and ponder and reflect on and Selah and pause is this. Ask God to heal your heart because you become so discouraged. Ask God to give you His strength and begin to put practices in place to live in that strength. Things like reading His Word and praying and worshiping and being encouraged by other people. Ask God to recalibrate your life, to give you long-term thinking, and then ways to eliminate any unnecessary or harmful baggage, including that little pesky sin that keeps getting in the way. And also, may you realize that you are not alone. That Christ is in you and He is walking with you. But also that others are going through the exact same thing. Folks, life is a marathon and not a sprint. So may you pause and let that sink in and begin to change you. Okay, that's our first set of questions. The next set of questions come from two other teachings we did, but they overlap, and so they're under the same heading on your note sheets if you're following with those note sheets today. The first one was called, "It's Time to Change Our Stinking Thinking." That was the title of that message. That it's not so much in changing the information that we're receiving, it is changing the entire process of how and why we think the way we do. So ask yourself these questions as you pause on this area. Is my thinking and how I think in line with Christ and His kingdom? Or is it in line with some other lesser cause or lesser kingdom? Now, do not rush past this one. I mean, we can deceive ourselves into thinking that God is in agreement with what's important to us and how we see the world. But this is asking God to show us those things, the belief systems that we have turned into idols, idols that we're not willing to let go of, to show us what those are and then give us the power to tear those down and to actually start thinking like Jesus. To dismantle all the ways that we think that are the exact opposite of God's character and the way of Jesus. Folks, that is worth pausing over and allowing God to deal with you right there. Now, the next few questions come from a teaching I did called Equal Ground and No Superiority. And this goes to the core of so much that is happening in our world right now. And my questions from that message are these. What have you chosen to draw lines in the sand on that you are willing to argue with people over? Are those things kingdom of God related or just the kingdom of man? Folks, will you choose to stop arguing and being argumentative? Who have you excluded or rejected or written off because they're on the opposite side of an issue that you are? Who are those people that you tend to look down upon or feel better than? Who do you need to start loving regardless of who they are? Would you right now ask God for His forgiveness? Go to them if necessary. And begin to walk then in grace and humility, and asking God to help you there. See, that is part of your pause. And then lastly, one last thing to wrap this up. Will you stop and begin to practice thankfulness? Who or what are you thankful for? Would you thank God for just the simple things? Start there. And then let Him reveal more. See, you cannot both complain with a critical heart and be thankful at the same time. Thankfulness and gratitude create a calming, soothing effect in your soul. I wonder if that would just change the culture of our world if we were just a bit more thankful. So spend time in these moments of pausing, of Selah, of reflection. And not just now in the time that we're about to provide, but also in your own quiet time with the Lord. And may it become not just an event or just something that you're doing, but also a lifestyle of practicing the pause. And you may want to take these note sheets that we provided and only focus on one or two things at a time. And then throughout the next week, spend time with God to continue the pause and to continue to work through some of these things. But for the next few minutes, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to first start and I'm going to play an instrumental song for a few minutes. And some of those questions we've asked will begin to be on the screen for you to just ponder and let God work those through you while we're playing that instrumentally. And then I'm going to, at the end of that time, I'm going to stop that and I'm going to sing a song over you. And we're going to have the words provided for you on the screen, but not so much for you to sing along with, unless you want to. It's going to be unfamiliar to you because it's something that I wrote about 14 years ago. But I really felt like this was a song that God wanted us to do today and provide on this video as a source of encouragement and a source of strength and a source of providing hope to you in whatever you're dealing with and to help you in your pause. All right, so at this time, I'm just going to grab my guitar. And if everything isn't perfect with this, that's okay. Just this is your time between you and the Lord, and may this be a blessing to you today. Here I am again, scared and unsure. Here I am again, wounded and worn. Here I am again. Lord, fill me with wisdom. Here I am again, my arms open wide. I lay down my life, my will at the altar. I give you all glory and honor and power. I lift up your name, 'cause I need your presence to live out these days and these moments, these hours. 'Cause here I am again, scared and unsure. Here I am again, wounded and worn. Here I am again. Lord, fill me with wisdom. Here I am again, my arms open wide. I lay down my life, my will at the altar. I give you all glory and honor and power. I lift up your name, 'cause I need your presence to live out these days and these moments, these hours. I lay down my life, my will at the altar. I give you all glory and honor and power. I lift up your name, 'cause I need your presence to live out these days and these moments, these hours. You know, in times like these, whatever times you may be facing and whatever you're pausing to reflect on right now, if we can just make this one next statement, how we choose to live in asking the Lord to be glorified in us. If our hearts and our lives were so kingdom-focused and kingdom-centric, it would make all the difference in the world. It would give us a place of stability and a place of hope. When you are scared and wounded and worn. So I'm just going to sing these words, be glorified in me, and I pray that it'll become your prayer too. Be glorified in me. Be glorified in me. Be glorified in me. Lord, be glorified in me. Be glorified in me. Be glorified in me. Lord, be glorified in me. Be glorified in me. Be glorified, glorified in this place. Be glorified, glorified in my life. Lord, be glorified, glorified in this place. Lord, be glorified, glorified in me. I lay down my life, my will at the altar. I give give you all glory and honor and power. Lift up your name, 'cause I need your presence to live out these days and these moments, these hours. I lay down my life, my will at the altar. I give you all glory and honor and power. I lift up your name, 'cause I need your presence to live out these days and these moments, these hours. Be glorified in me. Be glorified in me. Be glorified in me. Be glorified in me. And Father, as we come before you and we just end this short time of pausing and reflecting, of taking a Selah moment, I pray, God, that it would continue on past these moments, past these few seconds we've spent together. And may it continue on later on this day, later on this week. May it become a lifestyle, Lord, that we can come before you and realize we can lay down our lives before you and our wills before you, and that we need your presence, God, to live out these days and these moments and these hours. And as we do that, God, as we pause, as we reflect, as we take a Selah moment, may that refuel us. Give us the energy, the strength, the purpose we need to keep going. And we just thank you, Lord, for that today. In the name of Jesus, amen. Be blessed.